Okay. Yo, what is up? What is up? I see that we got Lucas in the chat. What's up? And we also, who is that? Jack Block. He said there's no chapter. It's break week. My bad. I didn't even know it was break week. I am just that far behind at the moment. That I haven't even read the latest chapter, 1184. So I'm finally getting to it almost a week late, but that's okay because if we're on break week, then you know what? I'm just getting to it a little late, and then that means less time for me to read 1185, So, what is going on, everyone? I am your boy Nerdtaku. My daughter is down for a nap, so I finally had a little bit of time to break off. And I'm not playing Marvel Rivals, so might as well read the chapter, right? Finally getting to it. So if you're new here, the chapter is down. I always get this wrong. Down in the right-hand corner. It has my logo over it, so I don't get copyrighted, and you can follow over there. But we are going to be reading 1184 off of Viz, the official translation. So please follow along and let me know your thoughts as we go. Don't spoil in the chat, but I definitely want to hear people's thoughts because last chapter kind of was crazy, seeing Brooke in the past. So I'm very interested to see what happens this chapter with Brooke's past. So I think last chapter I predicted that we wouldn't stay here too long. I was thinking like 3 to 5 chapters at very most. So 3 to 5 chapters for Brooke's backstory, and then we would go back to the action. I think that's when Luffy will kick in with Loki. Lucas says, "How have you been enjoying Elbaf recently?" Honestly, I had this same thought last chapter when we cut away from Elbaf. I said people were going to complain, and I was right. People are complaining that we are getting this mid-heated battle. But here's what I will say about this. One, I think it's necessary to have this background information for what will probably take place after. Whether that be Shuri slash Gunkro as a turncoat for the Straw Hats, or Shuri telling them Emu's weakness, blah, blah, blah. Like, there are elements to this that I feel like need flushed out, and Oda hinted at this several chapters ago before things kind of really pivoted to a crazy point. And I think that we've had this, we've had this when Oda will be mid fight or mid tee off, and then we get a flashback. I mean, right now I'm rewatching Ennie's Lobby with my daughter, and we had Robin's backstory right in the middle of the Straw Hats squaring off with CP9. We had so many amazing moments that are interrupted by flashbacks because it's background necessary to make the fights more impactful. And I think people are bitching about it, and I predicted that they would when I read the chapter. But I think that it was, if you've been here a while, you know how Oda does. So I think that it was necessary. It made sense. And I think that we needed this in these moments. Otherwise, this might not have made as much sense. So I think that this is perfect timing for the inherent Brooke backstory. So the flashback always brings emotional weight to the present events. Yeah, 100%. Exactly. And he said, this was expected for me, so I'm cool with it. Yeah, like it just makes sense to give this background information, because right now we're like, oh my god, Brooke knows Gunko. That's crazy. How does he know her? What is the emotional weight on that? Are they going to be fighting each other? I just feel like you haven't watched enough One Piece if you don't understand that this is giving more weight to those moments. And so, I don't know. To me, it makes all the sense in the world. And again, I could tell. As soon as we were, everything was kind of teeing off. You had Zoro heading to Somers, Sanji heading to Killingham, Luffy probably heading towards Loki and Emu, and Loki and Emu still scrapping. So like, there was definitely a part of me that was like, okay, like this is about to be the climax of Elbaf. These are the fights. But it's almost good to take a pause here, because I feel like, to me at least, and this is just my feelings on it, so if you have other feelings, that's perfectly normal. I feel like it's giving us time to wait in those moments to where we will feel like, oh shit, this is heading towards an insanely emotional and also just like cinematically insane climax. I like that Usopp's initiative in helping Brooke and inquiring about Gunko is why this is happening. Yeah, I think that this is actually going to be a lot bigger than people anticipate. That this backstory might actually give us a lot of information on what is happening, and there might even be some form of, tie in to the story. I think that the king, it looks very interesting. He kind of looks Davy Clanish, almost Blackbeard-esque. And what I find very interesting, and I think this is just me, so far we know that this island no longer exists, basically. And the island where Brooke is from, he says a piece of it is Thriller Bark. Like, he says that in Thriller Bark. So we know that that land got annihilated. But what I find even more interesting is all the places that we've learned about in the West Blue, which I'm pretty sure Lelucia is in the West Blue. I may be wrong on that. I'm going to actually look that up real quick. Getting a spam call. Lucia is a fictional island, blah, 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 blah. It was originally located in the... Okay, no, it's in the Paradise half of the Grand Line. But there's been now, with this, that would be 3 kingdoms, 3 whole islands that were eliminated. We have God Valley. Lelucia is in New World. Okay. So we have God Valley. We have Brooks' home. I forget what it's called now, like Elysia or something, or something crazy. And then we have Lelucia. And it's like almost every single place that we've known in the West Blue has been destroyed. Because like we haven't seen a lot of islands in the West Blue. And so it's very interesting that some of them were deleted, basically. And another thing that I find very interesting about it is I wonder if like the Ancient Kingdom or like the Davy clan chose the West Blue as like a settlement for them once everything happened in the world back in the day, and so they like split up and went out. Kind of like one thing that I think is also very interesting that I think ties into it is, and this is maybe just, recency, because I just watched Skypiea not too long ago. Nolan the Liar. They talk about how his descendants, after he after he got executed, basically faded into obscurity and sought out other lands to live, which is why Cricket survived, because the king didn't wipe out the entire bloodline of the Nolan family. And so they said that they, excuse me, scattered out from the world. So I wonder if it's similar to, hey, the ancient kingdom got wiped off of the face of the earth, but the people who weren't in the ancient kingdom when it was wiped out settled in other areas and, breed and had the Davy clan and so on and so forth. And they found different settlements, and one of them being predominantly maybe in the West Blue. And that's why Brookstown and God Valley got destroyed. So anyway, just food for thought. The sun sets in the west and rises in the east. That's very interesting, because Luffy rose up from the East Blue. It would be very interesting to find out if the ancient kingdom was in the West Blue, and that is where he had his final stand and Joy Boy passed. That'd be very interesting. That's a good thought, Lucas. I like that. That's fucking dope. But let's get into why you're all here. Let's get into this sweet, and I mean sweet chapter. All right, we have One Piece 1184. I'm going to go one page at a time. I like doing that unless it's a double spread. And it says, reader request, Brook getting electrocuted by electric jellyfish while swimming in the sea. This is actually really interesting for a modicum of reasons. One, Brook being in the sea in general, because he's a devil fruit user. I wonder, I mean, I guess your devil fruit powers weaken, but like don't. I'm trying to think here. Have we ever seen Brook in water to where like his soul started leaving his body because of it? Because that's the only reason the revive fruit worked, because it's a devil fruit. But if he gets zapped of that power, like if someone just puts sea stone cuffs on Brook, does he just die? I don't know. Just crazy. But also, all these jellyfish look like emu. They have emu eyes, and they're all shocking him. Like it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the Gorosei. Maybe. Who knows? Very interesting. That's actually a pretty interesting cover. Okay. Let's move on, shall we? Let's get into this chapter. Okay. By the time the princess of Asperia, that's what it is, not Elysia, of Asperia was 14 years of age, tales of her beauty had spread until 5 princes of nearby kingdoms had asked for her hand in marriage. And one of them falls on the ground and says, I yield. And they're all like, well, you're so weak. Or no, she's like, you're so weak. And they're like, we're sorry. It says, Kingdom of Asperia, Princess Shuri, age 14. And Shuri says, I don't like weak men or men who can't play music. And they're like, music? So she just loves Brook, basically. And it says, I hear you defeated all the princes in combat, Princess Shuri. And it says, I sure did. You like strong women, don't you, Brook? Well, I'm a lot stronger now. And I'm a lot cuter, I suppose. And he says, I suppose you are. And he said, and I bet my chest will fill out in the future too. And he said, stop that. It's undignified. And she says, oh, why do you have to talk like papa? And then all of a sudden, it says Kingdom of Vesperia Battle Convoy Commander Brooke, age 27. Okay. So if he was at sea for 50, that means within 3 years is when he leaves to become a pirate. Because he was 30 when he went and got stuck in the Florian Triangle for 50 years because he's 80, right? I'm pretty sure. And you see Brooke on his knees, and he's like, ah, beautiful, beauteous ladies, might I have a gander at your garters, a peek at your panties? And then Shuri throws her sword at him, and it bounces off his head, and she's like, who's undignified now? Bro remained true to himself. And then you see them sitting on like a wall, and says, he starts singing, oh, cows and frogs and slaves and kings, we're all bones when we die. Oh, and then she sing along, cows and frogs and slaves and kings, we're all bones in the end. That's all there is to say, yeah. And then he hits her with the yo ho ho. And Gungosa, or Shuri, says, haha, I love all your songs, Brooke. And he's like, yes, His Majesty said the same thing. Brooke may be a pervert, but he still has standards. And I love that about Brooke. He's like, yo, you're 14. Nah, I'm good. I'm good, dog. And like, you're the princess I protect. I can't do that. But this harlot over here, I can ask. And Shuri says, you really love Papa, don't you, Brooke? And Mama, too, of course. And he said, yes, I owe him everything. If I hadn't met your father, I'd be nothing but bones by now. That's so funny. What? We're getting a flashback within a flashback. This is kind of crazy. We see Brooke, age 11, and he's behind bars, and it's like, heh. And then all these kids are playing music, and it's like, you're so lucky. School, real instruments, they sound so pretty. Oh, he's not behind bars. He's looking in at a school. And then you hear, hey. And he's like, uh-oh. And he's like, wow, I'm sorry. And then I guess a police officer's like, that nasty little boy is peering through the bars again. Shoo, you're scaring all the students. And some of the maids or whatever say, like, ew, what a stench. The shame of the country. The way you sang Brooke's lines reminded of Mr. Rogers. Yeah, like, I feel like Brooke is just like a real, like, he's got a vibe, like a Mr. Rogers vibe, low key. I dig it. I think that would be cool. Give him like a Mr. Rogers vibe. Won't you be my neighbor? But instead it's like, won't you show me your panties? But we see Brooke, and he's on top of a trash dump. And Brooke sings, let's blame the king. We need a new king. One day we'll get to play real music. Dad and mom and little bro, we're all starving and skin and bones. How am I even alive? Eating toads so I can thrive. Let's blame the king. We need a new king. Damn, that's tough. And then we see this random guy come up and says, these are terrible lyrics. Did you make them up? And he said, and is that And Brooke says, "It's my violin." "That's a violin?" He said, "I made it out of glass bottle and some wire. Doesn't it sound nice?" And he said, "Sure way to be creative." And he said, You came here before, right? Are you a fan of mine, old man?" And he says, "Haha, maybe I am, but I'm not that old. I'm only 21." And Brooke says, "Wow, you look so much older. Yo ho 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 ho." And it said, "You must have had a hard life." And then he said, "Whoa, you got a weird laugh, kid." And he said, "Yo ho ho, I guess I'll call you bro instead." And then he said, "Here, bro, I'll cook you a meal as a sign of friendship. I caught some fresh grasshoppers and a frog today." And he's like, that's good." And Brooke says, "The secret ingredient is curry powder. I steal it from the Navy ships that come to port every now and then." And he's like, "Huh?" And he said, "It makes everything you put it in taste like curry. I guess that's not much of a secret ingredient then. Yo ho ho." He like looks down at the food, and it's like, "The soup du jour is dollar albalon, harvested from the Euro Peninsula and cooked in red wine with A6 rupee beef." And so I guess, he's from high class. It's a hard knock life. Yeah, dude. Yeah, he's like right now. Brooke looks like what's his name? Pigpen from Charlie Brown. He's got like that dust cloud and smell around him. And then you see like a butler being like, "Your Highness, this is the daughter of the Sephron Zabatsu. She graduated top of the class from Inoa Academy." And Brooke said, "What's up, bro? It's so good it made you tear up." And he's like, "Oh, right." He's like, "Huh? Oh, right. This is Asperia, too. I'm just a little tired. Thanks for the meal." And then all of a sudden, like, he has, like, the frog and it says chomp. And he, like, chokes it down. And he's like, "Yo ho ho, so good it makes you shiver, huh? I'm glad you like it so much." And he said, "Hang on, bro. I'll sing you a song now." And he's like, "Huh?" He's, like, still choking it down. And Brooke says, "What? You want to pay me? Don't bother, bro. We've got each we've got we've each got our troubles, don't we?" I mean, this dude seems like he's from royalty, and you know, uh kind of seems like he doesn't have his own trouble. I mean, he has his own troubles, but it's a different type of troubles. And then it looks like the king or the prince at the time just keeps showing up with like booze and random things, and they're just jamming together, and he's smoking a cigar. And it says, "One day, Asperia Cello Court." And it says, "It's a naval escort ship." And it says, "Load the merchant ship with instruments. Be very careful, they're fragile." And then you hear drip, drip, and we see a beaten up Brooke. And he says, "I don't know what you mean. You got the wrong guy." Cough, cough. And the Marine's like, "Don't lie to me, you little mule. Where's the powder the gangsters told you to carry?" And he said, "Where'd you hide it?" Louvain and Brooke are basically the prince and the pauper. Yeah, yeah. That's a good shout out. Yeah, I mean, very interesting. And then it said, "We paid a lot of money for that stuff, and you're supposed to give it to us. And instead, what do we find? Curry powder." And he starts singing, "Cows and frogs and slaves and kings. we're all bones when we die. And someone says, stop singing. Bro's a hater, certified hater. And Brooke says, it'll be over in a moment if I keep singing. So long, stray dogs. So long, bro. And the Marine's like, either way, he's seen our faces. We gotta kill him and go after the gang. And then he said, we're all bones when we die. And then all of a sudden the door breaks down. And it says, Brooke. And then we hear, huh? And we see Reuven. And he's like, huff, huff. And Brooke's like, bro. And they're like, Prince Reuven? Oh, here's a double spread. And Brooke's like, huh? Prince? And he grabs Brooke and he said, I'm so glad you're all right, Brooke. I don't know what I'd do with myself if you died. And then we hear someone say, step back, your highness. The battle convoy will handle the rest. And he's like, don't try to stop me. I'll do this myself. And they say, look what these guys did to my little friend. They need to feel the same pain he did. And someone said, hey, wait, that's Asperia's battle convoy. And then it says, Prince Reuven, we've caught the Mulan family and the mule who was transporting their drugs. And they're like, mule? And they're like, then he really is just a kid who loves curry powder? And they're like, Your Highness, you have to set your personal grudge aside. The world government is behind the Navy. And he's like, if the government is backing this scum, then the world's truly coming to end. Right, Candela? And she says, I am your trusted blade, Highness. I'll fight at your side. And the Navy's like, hey, stop, we're Navy. And someone said, no, you're not. You're trash. And they just blow through. Oh, the king wields dual swords and Candele just wields one. Very interesting. And Brooke's like, they're sword fighting. That's so cool. And they said, hey, did you hear? Lady Candela's done it again. She saved the kingdom from peril. Then we flash to Asperia Palace. And it says, are you awake now, Brooke? And he's like, huh? Candela says, I am not angry at you, Prince Reuven. I'm simply asking that you be more mindful of your royal position. And Reuven says, yeah. Hey, Brooke. And Brooke's like, you're a prince, bro? And he said, listen, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I wasn't trying to hide it. I just had too much fun hanging around you to ruin the good times. And he said, also, don't you dare tell anyone about stealing that curry powder. And then we see, every time Prince Reuven went missing, we went into a panic trying to find him. And there's like an exclamation point. And Candela says, I never would have guessed he was passing the time with such an adorable little friend. And then all of a sudden, Brooke just starts getting a crazy nosebleed. What a wild guy. And then we hear, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know your wounds were so deep. And then Reuven's like, nah, he's fine. Ignore him. And Reuven said, more importantly, listen up. This guy's my favorite musician. Give him a room in the barracks and some real instruments to play. And make it so he can attend school. And then Reuven says, we've got a new star in Asperia. And he's like, Brooke's like, huh? I love this guy. If we keep him around, life in the palace is going to be way more fun. Aw, that's very touching. And that's the end of the chapter. Wow. That felt so quick. That felt very quick. Wow. Okay. And it appears to be that there is a break week. So, very interesting stuff. I feel like, again, it's one of those times where it feels like a flashback in a flashback. Because it's like we have this time where Brooke is 27 or whatever. Yeah. And then he's like reminiscing about when he's 11. And it's really like, I think that it's good though, because it's establishing how deep Reuven's connection is to Brooke. Brooke seemed to be an orphan with nothing going for him. Though he did say, which maybe was just part of the song, where he said, like, dad and mom and little bro were all starving and skin and bones. But we don't see him with a dad and mom and little bro. So maybe they don't even really exist. Maybe it's just part of the song. But, this guy has known Reuven since he was 11. He taught him, or at least gave him everything he had, made him the leader of the battle convoy, and, seemingly gave him everything, gave him the ability to learn music, gave him the instruments to play. All of these things that Brooke has and Brooke grew up with, and so on and so forth, they're all due to this guy, which is cool. It gives Brooke's character a little bit more depth, and it shows how seriously Reuven was to, like, how much he meant to him. Another thing that I find interesting is, if it is true that Shuri killed her father, because he said, you committed patricide, just killing of the father, that could be why Brooke feels like he can't forgive Shuri, because this guy meant the world to him. I don't know. This is adding a nice little layer to Brooke's story. Like, I mean, truly, we had when Brooke became a pirate, and I don't know. We had a lot. To me, this almost feels like Sanji. Because, like, we had Sanji's backstory with Zeph and how good that was. We had Brooke's backstory with Laboon, and then what happened to him and losing his shadow, and how he died and came back, and everything like that. And that was all heartbreaking in itself, right? But now we're getting the even before that. Like, what happened? And it's just like, I don't know. It's a double backstory for Sanji, double backstory for Brooke, and I don't know. It's very good so far, I think. Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm digging what's happening here. Um, Another thing I find interesting is um, the fact that we have a kingdom in the West Blue that we know no longer exists, and they mainly focus on music. But not only just that, to me, I think there's another piece of this where it's like, this guy looks like Davy Clan, that he might be Davy Clan, and then on top of that, I mean, the world government ends up getting rid of this place and maybe even turning Shuri to kill her father. Like, there's a lot going on here. So how does this all go wrong? And why? Why does it all go wrong? Because like low key, how if they do this whole thing where like, you know, uh the world government comes in and ruins this and ends up destroying Asperia, then there's also kind of a, I don't know, kind of an established like why. Because is it maybe they have a lot of knowledge on Nika? Nika has like a beat and has music to his transformation. You know, Luffy says like, "Hey, you know, Heart, make that beat one more time." You know, is there a piece of that that is involved in this? Is music part of, you know, the source of power that Vegapunk was talking about, an everlasting source, an infinite amount of energy? It does it come from music, and are they advancing in that form of, you know, knowledge of music in the way that the world government says no, we can't have that happen again? It's like the ancient kingdom will resurface then. I don't know. I could see Oda using music as a power source. Like, it's not beyond the pale, in my opinion, for Oda to do that. One, he loves music. Two, we have film red. Three, you know, we have other crazy forms of energy. You know, we have people using cola and natural disasters that turn into cola, you know, to power cyborgs and shit like that. Like, we have a eternal flame. Like, there are all these things that can be converted into energy. Maybe this is one of them, and maybe that's why Nika and Joy Boy were so music oriented, and why Luffy's heart makes a beat, and it's called the drums of liberation. Like, there's something there, that I'm really interested to see. But overall, there's just a lot going on here, and I want more answers, but I'm also really enjoying the ride. I'm not gonna lie. I think that Luffy is like this is giving us time to breathe from the fight before it really kicks off, and I'm kind of digging it. And I feel like we're just getting a lot of info on Brooke that is interesting. It makes me go like, damn, it's crazy. We're getting a second Brooke flashback, and we haven't gotten any information on Nami, her backstory, because she was only found as a, like, we got her backstory, but she was found in like a battle ravaged place by Belmir, and somehow, like, you know, we have no idea where she originally came from, who her parents were. Did they die in that accident? Blah, 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 blah. Or did they die in that conflict? You know, and then we have Zoro, who we pretty much have a very standard backstory for, but we don't even know about his lineage besides for what Oda gave us in an SBS, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, we got Frankie's backstory, but I'd really still love to see Queen be his dad and like kind of expand on that and show us that Queen and whoever Frankie's mom was like abandoned him because they were like, ah, fuck it, we want to go do our own thing type. So I don't know. There's just a lot going on here, but I'm kind of in for it. I've been really enjoying it, and I understand people are gonna have their criticisms because they want to see, you know, I want to see flashy fight. I get you, dog, but we also need to have the emotional weight of why Gunko matters, why all this is crazy, and then we can get back into it. Kind of like how we'll get a flashback eventually of Emu and Joy Boy and all that other stuff, and that's going to make Luffy and Emu's fight have more weight to it. So, But yeah, that's my thoughts on this chapter. I thought it was a good chapter. It gave us a little bit of here and there. It gave us a little bit more understanding of Brooke's backstory a little bit, and it was kind of cool that we got to see royalty, because so often in One Piece we don't see good royalty, or at least good people in power, and we saw one. Reuven was a good dude, and good to Brooke, and I think that that's very rare. But overall, I think this chapter was like a seven, six or seven out of 10. Like, it wasn't anything insane, but it gave us a little bit more depth of Brooke's childhood and where he comes from. And I think next chapter, even though there's a break week, I think that once we come back, we'll probably only have. I originally said 3 to 5. I'm still kind of on that train. So we've gotten 2 of Brooke's backstory so far, kind of like 1.5, but we got like 2 of Brooke's backstory. I think we at least have another set of 3 before we get back to the action. Which Oda likes to do. His like rule of 3 is like he'll put out 3 chapters and go on a break week. Depending on how Shonen Jump's breaks work and stuff like that, he likes to do 3 on, 1 off. So I think we'll get probably 3 more chapters after this break week, and then that'll take us to 1187, and then we'll get on a break week, and then when we come back in 1188 is when we'll get back to the action. So overall, it was a good chapter. It wasn't great, but like I said, I do like the depth of it, and I do like kind of building out this king and prince as like this really good guy, and knowing that Shuri basically kills him, and how she would kill her father. It's kind of crazy to know. It's one of the few times I feel like we know, like when it comes to backstories, we kind of know some of the things. Like when it came to Rox's backstory and Loki's backstory and Harold's backstory. Like, we know Harold died. How do we get there? We know Reuven dies, and it's by Shuri's hands. How do we get there? So that's my thoughts on it. I would love to know your thoughts. Please leave them in a comment. And please make sure to like the stream. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm, and I really appreciate it. I do. I do this for fun. Like, this isn't like, I don't do this because I plan on becoming like the biggest content creator of all time. I don't. I do this because I truly enjoy One Piece so much, and anime, and it's a passion of mine. And so I do it because I think it's fun. I think it's cool to stream. It's cool to have this, and I also, I say this every stream. One Piece is better as a conversation, because One Piece is great, but having that conversation with other people and kind of like building off each other's theories and the theory crafting and stuff like that to me is what makes One Piece so amazing, is because we can have all these diverse ideas and stuff like that, and all these different theories, and any of them can be true, but yet we can come together and share those and just have like a really great time. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the support. I see Corvu. I don't even know how to spell. I don't know. Not spell. I can spell that, but I don't even know how to say that. Corvuru Yashwanth dash W1U. I don't know. I'm gonna just say Corvuru or Kovuru. What's up, man? Appreciate you coming through. And always, Lucas, appreciate you coming through, and Jack Block. You guys are so appreciated. Love talking, stuff with you, especially you, Lucas. You have a really good understanding of One Piece, and us just talking about, how the sun sets in the west, rises in the east, like all that stuff was really cool. So thank you, as always. But yeah, this was a good chapter, and I can't wait. I'm actually okay with there being a break week. I got a lot going on this weekend, so it gives me time to kind of recoup and then come back for 1185, right? 1185. We're on 1184. Yeah. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time. Right back here on the Nerdtaku channel. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. Please like the video, and just have a wonderful day and a good weekend. It's supposed to be nice out. So I will see you guys not next week, but the following. Jana.